At a sleek luxury car dealership in the heart of a big bustling city, a black man steps through the glass doors dressed in a faded hoodie and jeans. To the staff, he's just another window shopper, someone who doesn't belong among the gleaming sports cars and six-figure price tags. But as dismissive glances turn into thinly veiled condescension, he remains calm, steady, and unshaken. What the employees don't know is that the man they're judging isn't just a customer, he owns the entire dealership. And by the end of the day, he's about to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. The sun hung high over Los Angeles, casting a golden glow over the polished steel and glass of Elite Motors. The dealership's towering glass windows reflected rows of luxury sedans and sports cars, each vehicle exuding elegance and exclusivity. Inside, the air hummed with quiet conversations and the faint scent of leather and polish. It was a showroom designed to impress and to intimidate. Stepping out of a modest gray SUV parked discreetly in the back lot, Marcus Johnson adjusted the sleeves of his slightly worn hoodie. At 38, Marcus had long learned not to let appearances define him. His simple attire, jeans, sneakers, and the faded hoodie stood in sharp contrast to the tailored suits and designer dresses that moved fluidly through the showroom. That was exactly the point. Marcus didn't need to flaunt his success. Over the past decade, he had built a real estate empire from the ground up, turning overlooked properties into thriving developments and earning a reputation as a visionary businessman. When the opportunity arose to purchase Elite Motors, one of the most prestigious dealerships in Los Angeles, Marcus didn't hesitate. But today, he wasn't Marcus Johnson, the owner of Elite Motors. He was just another potential customer, a man looking to buy a car. He wanted to see the business through the eyes of its clientele, to test whether the values he wanted to instill in his employees were already present or if change was desperately needed. As he approached the entrance, he could feel the difference already. A trio of employees stood near the reception desk, their laughter fading as their eyes flicked toward him. The glances were subtle but unmistakable: hesitation, judgment, dismissal. Marcus let it wash over him. This wasn't his first time being underestimated. The glass doors hissed open, welcoming him into the cool, air-conditioned space. The marble floors gleamed, reflecting the overhead lights, and the hum of casual conversations resumed as if he were invisible. Marcus let his gaze drift over the showroom, pausing briefly on a sleek black coupe that practically demanded attention. Before he could take another step, Rachel Moore emerged from behind the reception desk. Tall, poised, and dressed in a sharp navy blazer, Rachel carried herself with an air of authority. Her eyes, however, betrayed something colder as they quickly assessed Marcus. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice clipped and polished, but the undertone was clear. She doubted he belonged there. Marcus offered a polite smile. "Just looking around," he replied, his tone casual as he gestured toward the rows of gleaming vehicles. Rachel's lips curved into a practiced smile, but there was no warmth behind it. Instead, her gaze lingered on his hoodie and jeans. "We cater to a very specific clientele here," she said smoothly, as though issuing a warning. "Most of our inventory is exclusive. If you're looking for something more budget-friendly, I'd be happy to give you some recommendations." Marcus arched an eyebrow, his smile unfaltering. "I appreciate that, but I'm actually interested in seeing your higher-end models." Rachel hesitated, clearly caught off guard by his response. She recovered quickly, though, her smile tightening as she gestured toward a set of pamphlets on the nearby counter. "Of course," she said, her tone slightly patronizing. "But just so you know, these vehicles start in the six-figure range. Financing options are available if that's something you'd like to explore." It wasn't the first time Marcus had been judged by his appearance, and it likely wouldn't be the last. But this was his business now, and he wasn't about to let this slide unnoticed. "Good to know," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I think I'll take my time looking around first." Rachel nodded, but the strain in her expression was evident. She wasn't used to customers who didn't fit her assumptions pushing back. "I'll let you browse then," she said, stepping aside but keeping him in her peripheral vision as if afraid he might touch something he couldn't afford. Marcus walked slowly through the showroom, taking in not just the cars but the behavior of the staff. A salesman in a tailored suit greeted a couple that had just entered, their designer clothes and jewelry immediately drawing attention. Marcus watched as the salesman offered them sparkling water and engaged them in lively conversation. When Marcus paused near a silver convertible, Rachel reappeared. "That model's popular," she said, her tone still hovering between condescension and forced politeness. "But it might be more than what you're looking for." Marcus let her words hang in the air before responding. "And what exactly do you think I'm looking for?" Rachel's eyes flickered, but her smile didn't waver. "I'm just trying to save you time," she said, offering a brochure featuring older, pre-owned models. Marcus took the brochure without comment, though his jaw tightened ever so slightly. He'd seen enough for now. He glanced at Rachel one last time, noting the smug confidence in her posture. This wasn't just about her, this was about the culture she represented. If this was how she treated him, how many others had walked through these doors and left feeling dismissed and undervalued? The thought sat heavy in his chest as he folded the brochure and slipped it into his pocket. He wasn't here to play games, and Rachel was about to learn that the hard way. "Thanks for the help," Marcus said, his tone even but with a slight edge. "I think I'd like to speak with the owner. Think you can set that up for me?" Rachel's brows lifted in surprise, but her smile remained. "The owner doesn't usually take walk-ins," she said, her voice dripping with barely concealed amusement. "They're very busy." Marcus nodded slowly, pulling out his phone. "Busy, huh? That's understandable," he said as he scrolled through his contacts. "I'll just give them a call and see if they can make some time." Rachel's expression faltered for the first time, her eyes narrowing slightly as Marcus pressed the call button and held the phone to his ear. "Yes, Ethan? Hey, it's Marcus. I'm at the dealership right now. Yeah, everything's fine, I just need you to stop by for a quick chat." The moment the words left his mouth, Rachel's expression shifted from amused confidence to growing panic. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket and gave her a polite smile. "They'll be here shortly," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "I guess we'll see how busy they really are." Rachel stepped back, her polished facade beginning to crack as she exchanged nervous glances with the other staff members. Around them, the energy in the showroom shifted. The man in the hoodie wasn't just another customer. And soon enough, everyone was about to find out exactly who he was. Rachel stood rooted in place, her clipboard clutched tightly against her chest like a shield. The nervous energy radiating off her was palpable, and Marcus could see the gears turning in her head as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. Around them, the other employees pretended not to stare, but their stolen glances and hushed whispers betrayed their curiosity and their unease. Marcus leaned casually against the silver convertible he had been admiring earlier, his fingers lightly tracing the edge of the polished hood. He maintained his calm demeanor, but his sharp eyes missed nothing. He noted how Rachel shifted her weight from foot to foot, how her eyes darted toward the door as though willing Ethan, the regional director, to appear and take control of the situation. Minutes passed, but to Rachel, it felt like an eternity. Finally, the glass doors swung open, and in walked Ethan Hayes' sharp suit, crisp tie, and an air of authority. Ethan was the kind of man who commanded attention without having to raise his voice. He spotted Marcus immediately, his expression shifting from polite curiosity to recognition, and then to something much more respectful. "Marcus," Ethan called out, his voice echoing across the room. A wide smile broke across his face as he strode forward, hand extended. "Good to see you, man. What brings you in today?" Rachel's face drained of color. She took a half step back, her eyes darting between Ethan and Marcus, realization dawning in real time. Marcus shook Ethan's hand firmly, his smile easy but deliberate. "I was in the area and thought I'd stop by to check things out," Marcus said, his tone casual but carrying an unmistakable weight. "Figured I'd see how things run when the new owner isn't expected." Ethan's smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered. "Of course. I hope you're liking what you see," he replied, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in his tone. "Oh, it's been illuminating," Marcus said, his gaze sliding to Rachel, who stiffened under the unspoken accusation. Ethan followed his gaze and seemed to take in Rachel's anxious stance for the first time. "Rachel," he said, his tone shifting to one of quiet authority, "I assume you've been helping Mr. Johnson today." Rachel's lips parted, but no words came out at first. She cleared her throat and tried to regain her composure. I wasn't aware." She stopped, clearly floundering. "I mean, yes. I was assisting him. Marcus arched an eyebrow. Assisting? Is that what you'd call it? Rachel flinched, and Ethan's eyes narrowed. What happened? He asked, his voice sharper now. Before Rachel could answer, Marcus stepped in, his tone measured but firm. Let's just say I've gotten a very clear idea of how first impressions work around here, he said, and it's not exactly flattering. The tension in the room thickened. Ethan glanced at Rachel, his jaw tightening. Rachel, I'd like to speak with you in private. Marcus raised a hand, stopping Ethan before he could lead Rachel away. Actually, Ethan, I think this is something we should address right here. After all, it wasn't exactly a private encounter when she made her assumptions about me. Rachel's face flushed, but Marcus wasn't done. I've been ignored, patronized, and directed toward the cheapest options on your lot, all because of how I look. He gestured to his hoodie and jeans. Not because of who I am or what I'm capable of, but because someone decided to judge me the moment I walked through that door. Several employees exchanged uneasy glances, and Rachel's shoulders slumped as the weight of Marcus's words sank in. And let's be honest, Marcus continued, his voice calm but unyielding. If this is how I'm treated, the actual owner of this place, what's happening to people who don't have the resources or confidence to push back? Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus cut her off. I don't want excuses, he said. I want accountability. And I want solutions. Ethan cleared his throat. Marcus, I assure you, this isn't how we usually operate. Isn't it? Marcus challenged. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like this wasn't an isolated incident. This was routine. Rachel's head dropped slightly, but Marcus kept going. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, straightening up and stepping closer to the center of the room. I want every employee gathered in the conference room in 10 minutes. We're going to have a conversation about what just happened, and we're going to start making some changes. Ethan nodded quickly. I'll make sure everyone's there. And Rachel? Marcus added, turning to face her directly. I suggest you think carefully about how you're going to explain yourself when we meet. Rachel swallowed hard, nodding slightly before turning and walking stiffly toward the back offices. Marcus exhaled slowly, his gaze sweeping over the remaining employees who were now scrambling to prepare for the impromptu meeting. The day had started as an observation, but it had quickly turned into a reckoning. He had expected challenges when he bought the dealership. Old habits and outdated mindsets weren't easy to change, but he hadn't expected the problem to be this deep-seated. Still, Marcus wasn't one to shy away from difficult conversations. He'd built his success on hard work, persistence, and the belief that respect was something earned, not given. And now it was time to make sure Elite Motors reflected those values starting today. As the employees filed out of the showroom toward the conference room, Marcus lingered for a moment, his eyes drifting over the polished cars and the bright lights. They were impressive, sure, but what really mattered wasn't the cars, it was the people selling them. And Marcus was ready to make sure they understood exactly what that meant. The conference room buzzed with a nervous energy as the employees of Elite Motors filed in, their faces reflecting a mixture of curiosity, unease, and for some, outright dread. The sleek, glass-walled room was designed to impress clients, but today, it felt more like an interrogation chamber. Marcus stood at the head of the long table, his calm but commanding presence filling the space. Ethan, the regional director, stood just to his left, arms crossed, his sharp gaze reinforcing the authority Marcus carried into the room. Rachel entered last, her shoulders squared, but the tight grip she had on her clipboard betrayed the anxiety simmering beneath her polished exterior. She took a seat near the far end of the table, avoiding eye contact with Marcus. Around her, the other employees exchanged cautious glances, clearly aware that something big was about to unfold. Marcus let the tension linger for a moment before speaking. His voice, measured and deliberate, cut through the silence. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, he began, scanning the room. I know this isn't how any of you expected to spend your afternoon, but what happened earlier today can't go unaddressed. A ripple of discomfort passed through the group, but no one spoke. Marcus took a slow breath before continuing. When I walked into this showroom earlier today, I came in as a customer, he said, his tone steady but firm. I wasn't looking for special treatment. I wasn't looking to make a scene. I wanted to see this place the way anyone else would, a potential buyer, someone curious about the product, someone who deserved respect regardless of their appearance. He paused, letting his words sink in. Instead, I was judged. I was sized up and dismissed based on the clothes I wore and the assumptions someone made about who I am. His eyes shifted briefly to Rachel, whose cheeks flushed. She straightened in her chair but said nothing. I want to make something clear, Marcus continued. This isn't just about me. What I experienced today wasn't unique. I'm certain that if I hadn't been the owner, I would have been shown the door, and none of you would have given it a second thought. Several employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Marcus noticed, but he didn't ease up. Do you know what that tells me? He asked. It tells me there's a culture here, a culture that values appearance over substance, assumptions over facts. And that's not the kind of place I want to run. Ethan stepped forward slightly, his voice backing up Marcus's statement. Elite Motors has built its reputation on luxury and service, but that means more than just selling high-end cars. It means treating every person who walks through that door with respect. What happened today doesn't just reflect poorly on Rachel, it reflects poorly on all of us. Rachel's head snapped up at that, but Ethan's gaze didn't waver. Marcus gave her an opening. Rachel, he said, his voice measured, I want to give you the chance to explain your side of things. Rachel hesitated, her carefully composed demeanor cracking under the weight of so many eyes. She set her clipboard down, her fingers tightening around its edges before she finally spoke. I made an assumption, she admitted, her voice quieter than usual. I saw someone who didn't fit the profile of our typical customer, and I let that influence the way I treated him. Her voice faltered, but Marcus didn't let her off the hook. And why do you think that was acceptable? He pressed. Rachel's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. It wasn't, she said finally. I thought I was protecting the image of the dealership, but I realized now that I wasn't protecting anything, I was undermining it. A murmur ran through the room. Marcus nodded, acknowledging her honesty but keeping his tone firm. Thank you for admitting that, he said. But acknowledging the problem is only the first step. What matters now is what we do about it. He turned back to the rest of the employees. This isn't just Rachel's issue. It's a cultural issue, a mindset that's seeped into this business, and it's unacceptable. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table. Starting immediately, we're implementing mandatory training focused on diversity, inclusion, and customer service, he said. We're going to tear down these biases, and we're going to rebuild this team with the values that actually matter: respect, professionalism, and integrity. The employees exchanged glances, some nodding, others still looking uncertain. Marcus wasn't finished. There's going to be accountability, he said, and it starts at the top. His eyes returned to Rachel. Rachel, you're being placed on probation effective immediately, he said. You'll be required to complete training and meet with me regularly to ensure this never happens again. Rachel's face fell, but she nodded. To the rest of you, Marcus continued, turning to the group, I expect more. And I'm going to hold you to a higher standard from now on. If you can't meet those expectations, this might not be the right place for you. The weight of his words hung in the air. Slowly, one by one, the employees nodded. Marcus straightened. This isn't just about selling cars, he said. This is about building trust, about earning the respect of our customers and proving that we deserve it. The room fell silent as Marcus's words settled in. Ethan stepped forward, his expression serious. We'll be following up with each of you over the next week, Ethan said. And I expect everyone here to take this seriously. The future of this dealership depends on it. Marcus stepped back, letting Ethan take over the logistics of the meeting. He observed the employees as they began to file out, some looking thoughtful, others anxious. Rachel lingered, finally approaching Marcus. She began, her voice hesitant. I want to thank you for not firing me. Marcus studied her for a moment. I'm giving you a second chance, he said. But what you do with it is up to you. Rachel nodded, then turned and left the room. Marcus exhaled, his shoulders relaxing just slightly. The hardest part was still ahead. Changing a culture took time, but this was a start. As he left the conference room and stepped back into the bright, polished showroom, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. Elite Motors was going to be more than just a luxury car dealership. It was going to be a place where people were valued not for their appearance but for who they were, and Marcus was ready to lead that transformation. Marcus Johnson stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of Elite Motors, gazing out at the pristine lineup of luxury cars that gleamed in the afternoon sun. The tension from the earlier confrontation in the conference room had faded, replaced by a quieter, more resolute energy. Employees were back at their stations, but there was an air of attentiveness, as if they were more aware of their surroundings and their actions than ever before. He turned to see Ethan approaching, a satisfied yet contemplative look on his face. "How do you think they'll handle it?" Marcus asked, his voice low but steady. Ethan crossed his arms and leaned against the glass. "Some will rise to the challenge. Others might not make it through the transition," he replied honestly. "But the ones who stick around, they'll be stronger and this place will be better for it." Marcus nodded, his gaze sweeping across the showroom floor. "That's what I'm counting on." A week later, Marcus returned to Elite Motors. This time he wasn't wearing a hoodie or jeans. He walked and dressed sharply in a tailored navy suit, his polished shoes clicking softly against the gleaming tile floor. Heads turned as he entered, but this time the looks weren't judgmental, they were curious, even respectful. Rachel was the first to approach him, her steps more measured than before. She wore a subdued expression and held a notepad and pen ready to take notes instead of relying on assumptions. "Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson," she greeted, her tone professional but tinged with humility. Marcus offered her a small nod. "Good afternoon, Rachel." "I've been reviewing the materials from the training program," she began, her voice steady despite the hint of nervousness. "And I wanted to thank you again for the second chance. I know I let you down before, but I'm committed to earning back your trust." Marcus studied her for a moment, then gave a slight smile. "I appreciate that, Rachel. Keep it up and remember, actions will speak louder than words." Rachel nodded, her shoulders lifting slightly as if a weight had been taken off. Later that evening, Marcus invited his closest friends and a few key employees including Rachel and Ethan back to his home for a small celebratory gathering. His sprawling modern house sat on the hills overlooking Los Angeles, a testament to his success. Yet, it wasn't the grandeur of the home that made the night memorable, it was the sense of community that had begun to form. In the living room, laughter and conversation filled the space. Ethan stood by the bar, pouring drinks, while Rachel chatted with some of the newer employees, clearly more at ease than she had been in weeks. Marcus moved through the crowd, finally stopping to stand next to Ethan. "You did good today," Ethan said, handing him a glass of whiskey. Marcus accepted it but shook his head slightly. "Not just me. It took all of us to make this happen, and it's still a work in progress." Ethan raised his glass. "To progress, then." Marcus clinked his glass against Ethan's. "To progress and accountability." The following week, Marcus decided to return to Elite Motors once more, this time as a mystery shopper again. He dressed casually, though not quite as understated as before, and walked through the showroom with a new sense of perspective. Rachel spotted him first, but instead of hesitation or discomfort, she approached confidently with a welcoming smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Elite Motors. Is there anything I can assist you with today?" Marcus smiled inwardly but kept his expression neutral. "I'm just browsing, but I'm interested in learning more about the latest models." Rachel nodded enthusiastically. "Of course. Let me show you our latest inventory, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to assist." As she guided him through the lineup of vehicles, her demeanor was professional, informed, and most importantly respectful. Marcus asked her questions, even throwing in a few comments designed to test her patience, but she never faltered. When they circled back to the main showroom, Rachel gestured toward one of the luxury sedans. "This one's a personal favorite," she said. "It has everything performance, luxury, and style. Would you like to sit inside and check it out?" Marcus finally dropped the act and smiled. "You've come a long way, Rachel." Rachel's eyes widened slightly, but then she smiled too, understanding the significance of his words. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson," she said, "and I won't stop improving." As Marcus left Elite Motors that day, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about fixing one employee's attitude, it was about setting a standard. He paused near the entrance, turning back to take one last look at the showroom. The employees inside were busier than before, their interactions with customers more attentive and thoughtful. Even Rachel, now shadowing one of the newer hires, seemed to embody the changes Marcus had envisioned. The dealership was no longer just about selling luxury, it was about offering a luxury experience built on respect, fairness, and professionalism. As he walked out into the warm Los Angeles sun, Marcus felt lighter. The road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but this victory was one worth celebrating. He knew that by holding people accountable and leading by example, he'd set the foundation for something greater than sales. He'd created a culture that valued character above appearances. And that, Marcus thought as he climbed into his car, was the kind of legacy worth building.